Back home, and the transition to a new Labor government continues. Let's start with the good news. Anthony Albanese didn't really put a foot wrong in Tokyo. In fact, it was a very good thing for him to meet with the Quad leaders and to have a bilateral meeting with the US President so early in his Prime Ministership. It would have helped to solidify his knowledge and his views about the security threats and the challenges for our region. If he wasn't embraced by them previously, he would be now. So it's a great way to set the tone for his Prime Ministership. It certainly meant that he committed strongly to strong positions on China and on standing up for our national interest. And he didn't take the bait from China and reach out to them cap in hand. In fact, after the Communist government congratulated him on his win, he suggested Beijing needs to stop punishing Australia for nothing before relations can thaw.
But it's not Australia that's changed, it's China has. It's China that has placed sanctions on Australia. There is no justification for doing that, and that's why they should be removed.
Yeah, he's still in the air, arrives back in Australia tonight, but well done to Prime Minister Albanese. Early days, but that is a good sign, standing firm on foreign policy. The climate change stuff at this Quad summit we expected. It was no surprise. And I guess it doesn't really hurt our diplomatic interests because the Americans run the same lines. But it doesn't do anyone any good to talk up the security implications of the climate issue. Let's be clear, this stuff is hyperbole, and it just adds to public alarm and deception. Look at this from Penny Wong in a video message to the Pacific just after she was sworn in as Foreign Minister.
The Australian government knows that nothing is more central to the security and well-being of the Pacific than climate change. We've heard the Pacific, and we will act, standing shoulder to shoulder with you as we address the climate crisis.
Really? That is just rubbish. It might be what the Pacific nations want to hear, at least some of them, but it's just patronising to indulge this nonsense. I've been to those Pacific nations many times, working for our Foreign Minister, meeting Pacific leaders and seeing their problems, looking at what they do need to improve their well-being. The most pressing issues for Pacific nations are healthcare, education, jobs, economic development and good governance. And when it comes to security, their main threats are internal dissent, often race-based and often violent, as we've seen in Solomon Islands, in Fiji, where there's been a series of coups, in Bougainville and elsewhere. And of course, the other security issue is the Chinese power plays into the Pacific. Climate change is an issue played up for political reasons and to press for more aid from wealthy nations. But if climate change was the real issue for the Pacific nations, do you really think they'd be cozying up to China, the largest emitter in the world of greenhouse gases, the country that generates almost a third of global emissions and rising, and which is adding the equivalent of Australia's total emissions to their emissions every year? I think not. So it's good that the Labor government is promising to spend more money in the Pacific. It's good that they're looking to pay more attention to the Pacific nations. Penny Wong is heading there tomorrow, gets back from Tokyo, then straight to the Pacific. That's all good. But let's not pretend that climate change is the killer issue there. So it's a good start on foreign policy by Anthony Albanese and Penny Wong, so long as they don't start to believe their own publicity on climate change. There are far more important issues globally and in our region.